right, today on the show, I have a super special guest, someone I've actually been listening to her own podcast for over a year now. I don't think I told you that.
Oh,
Um,
that's
but
fun.
today I have Cherylanne, and Cherylanne is a busy, busy woman, but with a lot of balance sprinkled in. And so we're going to talk about that today. She's the founder and CEO of Brilliant Balance and the host of the Brilliance Balance podcast. She's a trusted advisor for growth-oriented women who are juggling big careers with very full personal lives, which I think all of us can attest to connecting with. She's been married for an amazing 22 years, mom to three teenagers who are two girls and a boy. Is that right?
Yes.
And then honestly, like your secret sauce, your special sauce is you're an advisor to women business owners. You're an executive coach, a career coach, a consultant, and speaker. So you wear lots of hats and you lead a team, which we're going to talk about today too. So welcome to the show officially.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, no, I love it that we're connecting and you're a few steps ahead of me with motherhood and business too. So I'm going to be a little bit selfish here and ask some questions that I just want to
Of
know.
course. Yeah,
But so glad to have you. So tell me a little bit of your background. Like, how did you get to become a coach? What did you do before coaching? What was that journey like?
sure. So I never thought I was going to leave corporate life, really. When I graduated from college, I went to work for a Fortune 500 company, Procter and Gamble, and I started working in sales, which I don't really know how I ended up in sales. That was not my intention, but I started for them in sales. And then about 5 years in, transitioned into marketing and did marketing work on big consumer products brands
Oh,
for the next 10 years. So I was there for about 15 years.
hmm.
And I loved it. I loved working with the scale and the size of the company, the size of the brands. Probably the biggest brand I ran was Gain laundry detergent, which lots of
Oh,
people have heard
yeah.
of.
Yeah.
And when I was there, we hit $1 billion in sales. So they were very large businesses, big budgets, big teams, cross-functional teams. And I think it was like I had an MBA, but it was like a real world MBA, just
Yeah.
learning how businesses operate and how innovation gets handled. But also, there was this whole learning lab around how people work. And I really think it was my indoctrination into everything that people were doing right and everything people were doing wrong in terms of really taking care of themselves while they were working. So then at that point, I was expecting my third child. And I was 15 years kind of under my belt, and I just felt the pull to do something different. And that's when I started my entrepreneurial chapter.
Amazing. And so you've been coaching for how many years now?
Well, 14 years now.
Yeah.
So I'm like almost 50-50 in my adult professional life, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. That's so incredible. And it's awesome because we always say you're most positioned to serve the person you used to be, right?
Yes.
So you've
Yeah.
been through that journey, you really like got to see what it's really like, and now you're in a position to be able to help women who are in that same journey to be like, wait, there's a better.
And it's the best. That's just the
Yeah.
best because you're right. You have lived experience that can be of value to someone else in their journey. It's just the best.
Yeah. And one of the questions I asked you in the pre-show forum was just how do you know or did you think you'd be living the way you are today 5 years ago? And you said you actually think you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Is there any like key indicators? Like, how do you know? What's that confirmation look like for you?
So I think one of the things I've really learned is that the pathway is completely unpredictable, right? Like if you or I said, where exactly am I going to be in 5 years? There's just no way. I think there was a time where I thought I could figure that out, where I thought I was a really good planner. I still do think I'm a really good planner. I just
Mhm.
think life doesn't always go according to plan,
Sure.
at this point. So I can't say that I would have written the exact dynamics of life, but I think the way I feel is what I knew I was steering toward. And so for me, that's like that I have a really purpose driven career, that the work I do every day, I literally wake up excited to do.
Okay.
I'm fully in control of my schedule. And that is really just a luxury that I think we overlook when we're thinking about what are the luxuries in life, the level of discretion that I have over my time. I like a lot of juice. Like I like to work. So I'll pack my schedule when I want to, but I also know that I am fully in control of it. I spend a lot of time with my kids. And even though they're teenagers and you might think they don't want to spend time with me, like we're really lucky to have close relationships. And so being available to them during the hours and days that they need me was something that was so important. And like I had a realization of that when they were young.
Mhm.
I kind of had this moment that I tell a story about that we were sitting out on the patio in our old house, and people started asking, like, where do you think we'll be in 10 years? Like, that's kind of a weird family conversation, but that's what
Yeah.
we were talking about.
Yeah.
And I projected forward, and honestly, it's about where we are now. Like, it's pretty close to about where we are now. And at the time, it seemed so far away to imagine having three teenagers.
Hmm.
And my kids are 13, 16, and 19. And the fact that I'm going to exit that stage of having three teenagers soon is so crazy to
My
imagine.
gosh. So I was exactly you then 10 years ago because I've got the 4 and the 9-year-old today.
There you go.
I can't fathom teenagehood and like what that looks like. And you hear so many horror stories, of like, "Oh, this is how we were in kids and get ready." It's always like when you're pregnant and they're like warning you before the baby comes how awful it's going to be. And it's like, why not tell me all the blessings I'm going to have, and like paint a different picture. So do you have any advice for someone who might be in my chapter who has the little still? Like, what kind of things did you do to make sure you got to where you are today?
Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, I describe the first chapter of parenting as like the biological phase of parenting,
Mhm.
right? You're very invested in their biology. You're feeding them, you are paying attention to them going to the bathroom, like everything sort of revolves around their sleep schedule and their biology. And then you sort of move into like this educational phase where you're teaching them how to do lots, everything from tying their shoes to reading to basic math to, I don't know, how to assemble a sandwich. Like there's a lot of just pouring into these how-tos in education. I think this third chapter is really about values, and it's about their development of their, like, the psychological framework that they're going to look at the world through.
Love it.
So many of our conversations in this chapter are about helping them shape perspective, maybe is a simpler way to say that, and sharing mine and listening to theirs and helping them find like a healthy narrative about the chapter they're in and the chapter they're steering toward. It's a really different thrust to parenting, right? I think we're very much in control of the timeline and the schedule of all of those educational things when they're younger. They're very much in charge in this chapter.
Yeah.
My daughter, who's in her first year at university, when she calls, like, I don't miss that call. It doesn't matter when it is because she's fitting me into her very busy
Totally.
life, right? It's really different than them sitting down when you tell them to
Yeah.
to be ready.
No, it's so true. And I think as you were talking, I'm just thinking like it's so true. We have the biggest influence on them until they hit teenage years, right? So this is the foundation building to prepare them for that time to be like, wait, what is my worldview? How do I want to navigate this information that I'm getting? It's new challenges in different ways. Like right now, it's the attitude issues we're facing with the 9-year-old, but then it gets like intellectual challenges.
Yeah, and you think about it, you're like, those are developmentally appropriate challenges, right?
Yeah.
For a
Yeah.
9-year-old. Also for teenagers. They are trying to find their own worldview. So I always think about it as like, I am trying to be someone that they respect,
Mhm.
that, has kind of earned that over time
Yeah.
so that they come to me to say, what do you think about this? Help me think about how I should think, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, they may or may not choose to adopt the worldview that I've found my way to, but for them to at least want to listen, and to give me a
Totally.
voice in the chorus of voices they're listening to is important to me.
That's huge. Yeah. Instead of being like, oh, just blinders on, who cares what mom says? Yeah.
Right,
Absolutely
right.
critical. So good. Thank you for sharing that. So back to business stuff real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, you've obviously grown a business that's obviously running really great. You have a team that you help run. Who is on your team and how did you start to delegate tasks when you start to feel that overwhelm? How do you know when you need to hire, fire? What does that look like?
Are you at that stage now? Are you getting ready to build a team or do you have a
Not building a
team?
team. I've been managing a real estate team, but I
Okay.
just have a virtual assistant that basically runs my whole calendar for me and all the things. But it's just
Okay.
her for the most part. All right. So you've obviously grown your business since you started. I mean, new levels, new devils, right? So I wanted to know, how do you know when is it time to hire, fire? What does that look like? How do you know when to delegate a task? Share a little bit.
Yes. So it's such a good question. And I think as context, remember I said I spent 15 years working in a corporate career
Yeah.
before I started my first company. So the only model I knew was results through teams. Like
Mm,
that was my indoctrination from the time I was 20 years old and went to work
wow.
for that company.
Yeah.
And that's really important here because, as a 20-year-old, I spent, I don't know, maybe like a year where I was like a solo producer. And then I started running teams. So when I started my company, I immediately started thinking about, okay, who am I going to bring in? How can we go faster? I really understood that ROI model very early. So the question I ask myself, and this is what I would have your listeners think about,
Yeah.
is, am I uniquely qualified to do this task? Okay. And if you are not uniquely qualified to do it, it goes onto the list of potentially outsourceable or delegatable.
Love
Right.
it.
And so even from day one, as you are doing your tasks in your business, you start thinking about, like, long term, am I uniquely qualified to do this? And then you really want to think about outsourcing the tasks that free up time for you to do something that is, like, I'm going to say, has a higher return on the
Sure.
time invested, right? So I think of myself now in a business like mine, and people
Yeah.
have all different kinds of businesses, things that put my brand in front of like prospective partners, collaborators, clients, like, that is the highest and best use, because no one can do that but me.
Yep.
Right? It's so being interviewed on a podcast, hosting my podcast, going to do a speaking engagement. But if you take any of those things and you say, what are all the tasks associated with those? Right? I don't need to fill out the emails and send the assets over and go recruit the guests and make sure they have their technical stuff set up properly. And, like, there's a lot of pieces and parts of that that can go to other people, so that I'm doing the part I am uniquely qualified to do. Right. So our team has vacillated. Today we have a 6-person team. The size has gone, up and down a little bit over the years based on what we're up to.
Yeah.
And we're a virtual team today. We have had office space. Today we operate virtually. And that's really the bar I keep trying to hold all of us to, candidly, for them as well, is, are you uniquely qualified to do that? Or is there someone else we could keep kind of pushing this out into the hands of other people so we can go faster?
Hey, so I know you're loving the podcast, but just really, really quick, I want to drop in here. If your scroll looks anything like mine and there's success influencers telling you to do more, be more, sell more all the time, and you're just freaking overwhelmed, it's impossible, right? We just can't do it. How in the heck in the world do we do this as working moms? Well, when I tell you, you can't do it all. There is a season for everything, right? And a time for everything. And I am constantly asked, Marina, how do you do it all? Well, the reason is I have core values of my calendar that I stick to every single week, which is a way to time block my days in advance, super proactive, so that I'm not flailing and living reactively in a state of panic. And so the way that I formulated this is into a course for you. It's pre-recorded into 4 sessions. You can watch it all at once, or you can watch one a week, however you decide. But it's on the website. It's called Core Values of Your Calendar. It's got systems. It's got the tools that I use every single week, literally in my life, that you can replicate into yours, along with some really great stories and examples of some of the hustle and the burnout that I've experienced, so that you don't have to. So if that interests you, definitely go to marinatolentino.com and look for the Core Values of Your Calendar course. We'll get right back into this episode. I think we might get to that point soon where it's like, right now, like, I have the virtual assistant, but we're outsourcing the editing and all of that. It's not in-house, but I would love to get to the point where we have so much content that we need in-house video and editing team.
Yes.
Have more control, right? And you can really curate their time instead of just, that contractual agreement.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, because I also think in small companies, I think about hybrid roles a lot, right? So you may have someone who, in addition to doing your in-house video editing, there's other things that that same person is able to do that might even have nothing to do with marketing, right? Or podcast production. So we really look across individuals at, like, what's the type of work they're good at. I have somebody on my team who's excellent with details. Like, she will follow a process and there will never be a detail missed. She does work across a lot of different kind of departments, so to speak, because she's so good at that attention to detail. I have other people who are great at creativity, right? So they may be doing creative work across a range of disciplines. And I think in small businesses, you do have kind of Franken roles where things are, like, glommed together, that might not be in a larger organization. And that's a very important thing about hiring. And for what it's worth, there's one other. So my clients are often entrepreneurs, right, who are trying to do this. And one of the things that I'm forever reminding them of is, you don't have to hire full-time people.
Oh, no.
There are so many people who want to work less than full-time. And so if you can't see your way to, oh, I've got the next, like, full FTE, you certainly can bring people in for a certain number of hours that could grow with you over time.
Yep. And usually what I found is once you give them little bits, then they want more because you're starting to grow them with you. And they're like, oh, what if I did this, 20 hours a week? And you're like, yes, let's do it. Because I see the
Exactly.
ROI too. And so then she gets paid more. And it's a win-win-win. Yeah.
Yes.
So good.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So with all of that, running the team, running the family, how do you prioritize self-care? Like that is the forever struggle of women, I feel like, because we put everybody first all the time.
Yeah, it's so at the epicenter of what I teach through my brand,
Mhm.
and also what I believe. Okay, and I will say there's a few words that kind of make my like skin crawl, and that might be one of them. Like I think we have literally co-opted the term self-care to a level where it sounds like luxury,
Yeah.
right? I
It's
hate the word.
twisted the word of it, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I actually really like the phrase taking care of myself. I don't know why that feels different to me, but saying like, what do I do to take care of myself? Or sometimes I'll say to tend to myself.
Mm.
Those phrases just go down a little easier. And I think, for the people listening, like if you are rejecting a particular practice that you know is good for you,
Mhm.
because there is a collection of words that creates an emotional response, I think that's worth paying attention to.
Yeah.
And it really is enough sometimes to create like resistance, when there's language that we're resistant to. So,
Sure.
whatever you call it, I think there's a collection of practices.
Yeah.
I call them foundational practices in our business. These are the foundational practices that
Mhm.
keep us healthy and whole and human. And for me, the way that I like am able to prioritize them and sustain them is that I am so clear that I am a better human
Yeah.
to everyone around me, including myself, when I am doing them
Mhm.
than I am when I am not.
Yes.
Okay. So a couple of mine, like sleep, is something that when I was younger, like 20s, early 30s, I definitely thought it was unnecessary. I
Yep.
think our culture has come a long way. Thank you, Ariana Huffington and others. I think our culture has come a long way to helping us understand that sleep is foundational. It's one of those force multipliers that if you get it right, every waking hour is worth more to you. And that's what I would say to the listeners who still haven't gotten the memo,
Mhm.
right? That every waking hour I have, even though there are fewer of them than
Yep.
there may be for some other people, is worth more in terms of productivity and quality of energy and mood because I have enough rest. Like
Yep.
it's just a game changer. Food and movement,
Mhm.
right? Hydration, those things are just so clear to me. The dots are so clearly connected
Yep.
between those practices and how I feel that I just would not imagine not doing them.
Yep.
And I think for people who aren't doing them, those dots haven't been connected,
Mhm.
right? Because they become so dear to us when we see the results, when we know that everything in us is like vibrating at a higher frequency, right? When we do those things. And for me personally, the other most important practice is time alone.
Mhm.
Time where no one needs me is how I say it, right? I mean, again, I have 3 children. I have a husband. I have a company with employees. I have clients. I have parents who live close by,
Yeah.
friends and extended family, a church community. Like there's tons of people clamoring for my attention. That
Mhm.
ability to say, for this period of time today, no one needs me,
Yes.
might be very small, but I am a better person when I am able to create a little bit of that space, right? So whatever you do with that time is up to you. But knowing what you need at a really foundational level, I think is so important. And I know there's like a meme almost these days about like, going to Target doesn't count as self-care. I actually think it does. I really do. I think if you think that a good trip to Home Goods or Target by yourself, where you can get the Starbucks and you can walk around and look at pretty things, and importantly, no one needs you, I actually do think that counts. So
100%.
no one gets to define for you, what counts.
No, that's super good. And I think what I love most about that is you're just talking about the essentials for the most part. It's not anything extra. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to go anywhere. Like it's literally just taking care of our own well-being. That's what it is.
Yes.
And the mental break is so huge when it comes to being alone, especially when kids are really young and just constantly clamoring on us. Like It's true. There's never a break. Like my kids are on spring break right now and I'm homeschooling one as well. And so it's just like constant. And I'm like, I just need to go in the room for 30 minutes and you guys are going to watch a show and I'll be back a new person. You know?
Yes. And I think that's so important that there are some of those practices that I mentioned don't have to be done solo, right?
Yeah.
The food you eat, the hydration, those things don't have to be done solo. When my kids were little, I famously, like this is like a famous story in my podcast now,
Yeah.
that it was habitual that I had a home gym because I realized I had to eliminate all of the barriers, right? So I would go down to my home gym and they're like, what do you do if the kids wake up? I'm like, then they came to the home gym too.
Yeah.
You know, if they woke up, it was like, hey, it's cool that you're up. I'm going to be here. If you need to be within eyesight of me, just come down. Like, and that could have been the little pumpkin seat that they sat in. It could have been that they were clamoring around on other things. It could have been that they were, eating a bowl of Cheerios, whatever.
Yeah.
They were and you know what? To this day, they respect that time because those practices were established so early.
And that's just, you had the self-discipline to say, no, this is happening no matter what. And you train them to expect it that way, that no, we're not going to get a snack right now. No, I'm not going to do this for you. It's like, you need to wait till I'm done. That's a hard thing to learn. I am currently in a season where I just put off my health and wellness for so long because I would prioritize business over myself. And then you start getting sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like you have
Yes.
a pain threshold where you're like, enough is enough. I hate how I look. I hate how I feel. And it was honestly a Tony Robbins conference that had me like flip a switch.
Yes.
But now that I've been at it, like it's been probably 5 months of eating really well and 3 months of going to a personal trainer, which is a whole nother thing. But like the energy that you get, what you said about sleep, it's a multiplier and it's an
Oh,
energy multiplier. And it's like, okay, I woke up groggy, but now I worked out, I expelled energy, but now I'm leaving with double, quadruple the energy. But I do think it's just like any habit. You're starting from scratch and you're going to mess up and you just have to keep going and going and going until you really like embrace that good feeling that you're getting from return. Hey ladies, real quick, if you are looking for a mentor, I just wanted to remind you that I offer mentorship to entrepreneurs. So if you're someone who has a never-ending to-do list and you're spiraling out of control and feel like your business doesn't have a track plan, I want to work with you every single week for a month at a time. It's super simple, but I come from over 10 years of experience doing this myself, and now I'm willing to give that information back to people. So I've mentored real estate agents, I've mentored wedding photographers, I've mentored other business owners, and they've come from a place of overwhelm mostly, and they really just needed clarity and a couple of action steps to move the needle, and we've seen gigantum leaps and bounds in their business, like I can't even tell you. So if you're interested and you want to know what that looks like, I want you to go to marinatolentino.com, and there's a Calendly link there to do a 15-minute discovery call with me just to see if we're a good vibe check, to make sure we're on the same page, and I would love to work with you one-on-one to really boost your business to the next level. So let's dive back in.
Well, and let's talk about habit for a second, because I think, again, the biggest question I probably get about how do you start? Like, I love how you said, like, look, I wasn't doing it I had to figure out how to fit this in.
Yeah.
Something that I think is so important this is so practical. When I say this, the listener's going to go, oh, duh, right? Any new habit you are trying to build is going to replace something that was already sitting in that time.
Yeah.
And I think we forget that, right? We think like magically out of thin air, time is going to materialize for us to do whatever it is, meditate, work out, read, journal, whatever. Okay. But it's not. So you have to decide, what am I willing to give up to get this thing? And look, let's make good choices, right? So we can all give up some scrolling. We can all give up some trash TV or whatever it is. There are somewhere in your day that there's something you care about less than you would care about this. So being very intentional about kind of engineering, where is this going to fit in best for you? And what are you going to have to displace to make room for it? And please don't displace sleep. That's the one thing I'm always saying.
Yeah. What comes
Don't
to
tell
mind
me
is
you're
like,
going to wake up early.
maybe we turn off the TV 30 minutes earlier so that we can wake up earlier, but we're not losing sleep. We're still maintaining sleep. Yeah, that's so good. So I think this naturally goes into time management and how we prioritize time. And I think for me, like, I would love to hear your advice on boundaries and how we start to protect our calendar. What advice do you have? Because I think it's something we always struggle with, saying no, or you even have made a post about being apologetic and saying sorry too much. Like as women, we're people pleasers naturally. What advice do you have for women like that?
It's so important, right, that we figure out how to do this because it's everything. I mean, I firmly believe that what sits at the epicenter of everything we want is choice.
Yep.
Learning that we have the power of choice, that we can exercise those choices, and that when we make the choices with intention, we usually feel a lot more solid about them. Okay. So, what often happens for women when they have to say no, like you're talking about holding a boundary often involves saying no to someone.
Yes.
Okay. And you tell me, what do people feel when they're going to say no?
Sorry, I can't. Da, 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 da. Like just this, you like go inside.
Yeah. And what's the emotional state? What are we afraid, or how are we feeling, or what are we afraid is going to happen with the other
I'm
person?
afraid I'm disappointing them, letting them down, that I'm not the person they want me to be. Like you go into all these crazy thoughts. Yep.
Yes. Guilt, right? Some like just this sense of like, oh my gosh, I am not enough. I can't believe I couldn't make the time. I feel so guilty. They're going to not like me, right? All that stuff. What we're very focused on in that case is the no. We're
Mm-hmm.
focused on the cost of the no. Like what me saying no to them is going to be painful. Me saying no to them is going to make me feel guilty. Me saying no to them is going to make them not like me.
Mm-hmm.
What we're not focused on is that if we say yes to them, we're saying no to something else.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It goes right back to that same principle. If you're building a new habit, it's going to displace something.
Yep.
So too with saying yes to an invitation, to a meeting, an obligation, a deadline, whatever. If I say, yes, I'll do your podcast, right? And I'm doing this at 5 p.m. local time for me.
Yep.
I am saying no to whatever else I could be doing at 5 p.m. Typically 5 p.m. local, I'm not working,
Yeah.
right? So when I say yes to this, I'm saying no to something else. If
Absolutely.
I say yes to a meeting at 6 p.m. or 8 a.m. or whatever, I'm saying no to the family dinner. I'm saying no to getting the workout in, whatever they are. So I think the way we start to reconcile this and get better at holding boundaries is looking at the whole equation.
Yeah.
Not just what is the easy yes that I'm giving to this person to make them like me, but
Mhm.
also having to account for what am I saying no to? Well, every yes has a no. Okay. That reconciliation makes it easier to hold the boundary, right? Because
Yeah.
we're actually, it has to win out over whatever else was going to happen. So, real example, like in my life tonight, this was an easy yes, because I
Mhm.
have one daughter at volleyball practice and my son at track practice,
Cool. Yep.
and my husband was driving them to those things. So this was easy peasy. Nobody was really, I didn't have to say no to a lot to make
Yeah.
this one work. But had I had to, if this was a night that somebody had an important game or a concert, it would have been a no. We would have had to find another time.
Another thing I want to add too is the urgency of it. A lot of the times we really like to say yes or no right away because it's just like emotional instinct. And what I love to teach is why don't we just take a pause and say, let me get back to you, let me circle back, or name drop somebody. I have to check with so and so. And then it gives us time to process before we actually say the yes or the no. And
Pull
once you
some of the
take time,
emotion out.
yes,
Great idea.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's always like, wait, let's just like pause. Not everyone needs an instant response. Like
Yes.
you
Yeah.
can wait 24 hours. That's super good. So one of the things you mentioned is you have, is it a course coming up or 14 days to calendar control? What is that? What's the program?
So 14 Days to Calendar Control is a program that we developed that is designed to help people essentially operate what you and I were just talking about,
Mhm.
how to get boundaries on their calendar so that they are able to um, curate time back, like save time from what is already in there and be more intentional about the way they run their week.
So good.
So it's a process that we've been taking people through kind of at the epicenter of one of our bigger programs that we've recently been able to pull out and say, okay, what about just this piece? Because this seems to really be a nut that a lot of people are struggling to crack.
Ooh, I love it. So how do they find out more information? Where do they go for that?
Easiest place to go is just straight to our website. So brilliant-balance.com will lead you straight to wherever you need to get.
Aside from that action step, what advice do you have or like any nuggets and seed planning you want to leave for a woman who's literally in this state of overwhelm where they're trying to always do it all? What do you want to tell them?
Oh, it's such a good question. And these are the women who have my heart, right? The women who are in the thick of it. And I think what I would just leave you with is that having it all, which is what we've all been told that we can have and that we want, never meant doing it all. I think we got those two messages really conflated somewhere along the way. And I want women to have it all. I want you to have whatever all means to you. And I think we have to redefine what that is as individuals, right? Having it all doesn't mean having all the things. It means having all the things that are important to us, and knowing that having them doesn't mean we have to execute every blessed piece of it, right, on our own. So learning how to get results through others, learning how to share the work at home as well as the work at work, to let some stuff go, and reduce our level of internalized perfectionism, can really go so far toward us enjoying like the lives that we've been blessed enough to build.
Yep, super good. I think when you're saying that too, I'm thinking of vision casting. So you're like, okay, a year out from now, 3 years, where do I want to be? We don't picture the people with us that are helping us accomplish all of that. And so some of that is letting go of control of a lot to get what we want instead of thinking you have to do it all. Absolutely.
Right. Which is, I always say, I like control a whole bunch, right? I mean, it's the hardest thing to think about getting results through others. But if when we can learn how to do that, when we can learn that that actually is the force multiplier so that we can have more, but not have to manage so much of it, it gets a lot easier.
Yes. So good. So good. Okay. So I end every episode with some fun rapid fire. So what is your go-to Starbucks order?
Oh, tall, dark roast, splash of heavy cream.
Ooh, yeah. Okay. What do you make for dinner if it's last minute and you're in a bind?
Whatever is in the refrigerator that I can turn into some sort of random concoction.
Got it. Okay. What is your fave go-to department of Target? And do you have a favorite designer?
I would say lately, probably on all the Joanna Gaines stuff that they've added for Magnolia, that just seems to be where the gravitational pull is. Other than that, beauty care.
Ooh, yeah. Okay. Name a book or obviously your podcast you'd recommend to the show audience and why.
Well, I will recommend the Brilliant Balance podcast. So I think that's a generous invitation on your part. I'm so blessed to have done that for 7 years. I think I love doing the show and I would love to have more people listen to it.
Okay. TikTok or Instagram?
TikTok or Instagram? Instagram.
Last thing, Instagram. What is your handle? How do they find you online there?
C Skolnicki, which is unfair because that's a lot of letters. So CSKOLNICKI.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy, like I said, but this was so good. I really hope people sign up for your course, your time calendar one. Taking control of your time is one of the biggest freedom things you can give yourself. And it's just going to give you peace of mind and empower you to do the things that we all want to do with a little bit of balance here. But there's no such thing as absolute balance. It's a working needle. So thank you again, Cherylanne. I really appreciate you. And we'll be in touch.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.